بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Tonight marks the first night of the last 10 nights of Ramadan, al-Ashr al-Akhir. These are the most blessed nights of the entire year. The scholars have always traditionally argued regarding which days are the best in the year, because you have the first 10 days of the Hijjah and the last of Ramadan. So the agreement, or Imam Nawawi and Ibn Hajar similarly, they broke the tie with the following explanation. They said that the best 10 days of the year, like days as in during the day, are the first 10 days of the Hijjah, and the best 10 nights of the year are the last 10 nights of Ramadan. And I find that to be a fair assumption, a fair assessment of the issue. But these nights are for sure extremely blessed. And even if someone did not put in the effort in the first 20 days and 20 nights of Ramadan, well, these 10 nights can absolutely make up for the lost time and the lack of effort and the lack of commitment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to commit ourselves in these last 10 nights, and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the bounty and the ajr of Laylatul Qadr. Allahumma ameen. So I'll talk a little bit about tahajjud today after Salat al-Isha when everyone's here, so I don't have to do it twice. The Quranic theme that I'm going to share with you tonight is talking about proper representations. This is actually it's not just a Quranic theme, but it's something that we find heavily talked about within the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and within fiqh. It's something that the usuliyun, the people, the scholars of the origins of jurisprudence will use as a background or a reasoning for a number of rulings that they will generate. Because it's very important within Islam that we represent ourselves appropriately and we represent Islam appropriately. This is a requirement. You're going to carry, if you say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and you accept this shahada of tawheed, and you accept the buy-in for the faith, then you need to represent it appropriately. Because whether we like it or not, faiths, theologies, ideologies, groups, sects are judged based on the behaviors of the people who claim to belong to them. It's not right, but it's reality. It's not right, but it's real. And even though it's not right, we still have to deal with reality. As Muslims, we point out what is right. لا يعرف الحق بالرجال. You don't know haqq based on the behaviors of people. وإنما يعرف الرجال بالحق. But the status of people is known by their adherence to haqq. That is the correct way of going by things. That's how we look at things. We don't judge an ideology or a theology or a group or a nationality or a race or a country by the behaviors of people who claim to belong to them. We look at the actual teachings. We look at the content itself, the principles, the values that it brings forward, and then we argue that. We don't argue people's behaviors, because people will behave. It's a variable. People's behaviors are variables. We want to argue the actual teachings. But we understand that people won't offer us that same courtesy. People won't offer us the same courtesy by judging Islam based on what the book is saying. They're going to judge Islam based on you, based on what you do, and how you behave, and how you carry yourself, and what you say, and how you dress, and everything that you are. Islam is going to be judged based on you. So knowing that, we have to put forward proper representations. And this is a really interesting aspect of how Islam functions. It really is. Like it shows a certain degree of wisdom that I think is worthy of praise and of acknowledgement. That we hold ourselves to the correct standard of how we see things. We don't judge people or faiths or theologies or ideologies or religions or anything based on people. We don't do that, but we know that others do. And because we know that others do, we hold ourselves to a different standard too. So we hold ourselves to two standards that most people refuse to hold themselves to begin with. But it doesn't matter, because we hold ourselves to the standards that are going to achieve the objectives. What's the objective? The objective is to bring people's hearts closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we know that others are judging Islam based on our behaviors, then we have to represent things appropriately. We have to represent Islam correctly, because if we don't, then we are accountable. Especially when we understand the equation, when we understand that others are not judging Islam based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in His book, nor by what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in his life or said, but rather by the way I carry myself and the way I speak and the way I walk and the way I talk and the way I think and the way I behave and how my transactions goes and my relationships, then I have to hold myself to the proper standard. This is also understood by imams. The moment you get up on this, you're held to a different standard. So if you're not willing to be held to that standard, don't get up on it. The moment I sit here, I know what comes with this. It's a package that's not pleasant, right? You're not held, you're not seen, you're not treated like everyone else. You're treated differently. Your mistake is going to be multiplied by 1,000 or 1,000,000. It's just how it is. It's understood from the day that you're taught knowledge and you're granted the ability to stand and teach and preach and guide, and then you're told this beforehand. If you're not willing to put up with the fact that that's how you're going to be treated, then don't do it. Stay on the other side of things and you're safe. You can make your mistakes and you can be judged as everyone else. But the moment you take this, that's why the Prophet ﷺ was held to an ultra high standard. An ultra high standard, a standard that none of us can hold ourselves to, honestly. Because he was Rasulullah ﷺ, and he, yeah. So these proper representations, this concept is very, very important in our deen, and it carries a lot of weight. And you are required by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to represent that which you claim to believe in, that which you claim to be a part of. You are required to represent it appropriately and hold yourself to that standard. Whether you are actually capable of doing that or not, whether your reality is that or not. This is something that parents have to understand. As a parent, you have to hold yourself to a standard that is different than the one you held yourself to before you had children. Because the moment you have children, you are now representing something. You're representing decency. You represent decency, normalcy, normality to these children. These children will take as normal whatever it is that you are doing in your life, you and your spouse. So if you're yelling and screaming and cursing and using bad language and abusive to one another, that is what they're going to normalize in their lives. They're going to think that's normal, and it isn't. And it's not normal, which is going to cause them discrepancy later, which is going to put them both at a disadvantage. Both your children, male and female, will be at a disadvantage in their lives because they think something that is not normal is normal, and that is going to harm them in their relationships. It's going to harm them in their self-esteem and their self-value and their ability to build healthy relationships and maintain them. If you put on the wrong representation of Islam in your house, then you will repel them slowly from Islam. You will show them. If you are taking from Islam, if you're picking and choosing, taking what you want, then you're teaching them that hypocrisy is okay. And children, because they're pure, they're able to sniff out hypocrisy really quickly, and they don't like it. They don't like someone who says one thing and does the other. Doesn't like someone who acts like they're good, but deep down inside they're not behaving that way. Children can sniff that out really quickly. And when they see it, it's not attractive to them anymore. They're not attracted to whatever it is that you're preaching because they see that there's a discrepancy between you, what you say, and what you do. And that is going to cause them to be, they're going to repel, they're going to be repelled by Islam. This is the majority of struggles that I find with the youth when I'm talking to them. It's whatever they were told when they were kids that made no sense, that they were held to, even though there was no reason for them to be held to these standards. It was the lack of understanding of their parents of the deen, or bad practices. And now it's 17, 18 years in, or 21 years in, and I can't fix what 10 years has broken. I can't correct it in a 5 minute or half an hour or whatever session. And honestly, the time that is needed to fix this is not something I have to offer. I can't spend 15 and 20 and 25 hours with people explaining all over and over again the basics. It's not compatible with the life. You can't do it. They deserve it, but you can't do it. So how do we prevent this from happening by making sure that we have proper representations of Islam in our homes, in our masajid. I have to represent Islam appropriately to you. Not the way that suits my agenda or what suits my personality even, but rather what exactly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has explained in His book as He wants it subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I can't do that, then I step aside. And I say this to all of the volunteers and the people who work with us. If you're not willing to represent Islam appropriately, if you don't have the strength, the grit, the patience, then jazakallah khair, go on the other side of the rails. But you can't come stand on this side of the rails and abuse people and yell at them and get upset. And you can't. You have to, on this side, you have to be welcoming and ahla wa sahla, and you have to show the tenderness and the compassion and the love and the welcoming that is required with this type of work. And if you can't do that, then this is not for you. This is not for you. All right. The first ayah that we're going to share that we will hear in the first set of 4 rak'at inshallah tonight in Surah Al-Ahzab is an important one. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ قُلْ لِأَزْوَاجِكَ وَبَنَاتِكَ وَنِسَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ ذَلِكَ أَدْنَىٰ أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and all of the women believers, all the women Muslim women in the world, all of them, يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ. Al-jilbab is the piece of garment that a woman wears, and it's designed to cover the entirety of her body. يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ mean when they wear it in a way that's appropriate, where they're not showing off any part of their physique. They're not showing off their skin, or showing off their figure, or showing off their form. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَىٰ أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. It's better that way, because that way they represent themselves and represent Islam appropriately. And they represent not only Islam appropriately, but their adherence to Islam appropriately. So فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. So they're not harmed as much. They're not harmed by being thought that they are living a different type of life. And they're not harmed by being called something that they are not. Or not harmed by being accused that they are something that they are not, or being not practicing Muslims. This is the exact example that I was giving you. The exact example I was giving you. People don't have the right to judge someone based on their dress. You don't have the right to judge someone based on the way they dress. That's their appearance. It's not your business, really. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that that's going to happen anyways, it's going to happen. And Islam is going to be judged by the way people behave within it. So the Muslim sisters, they need to represent it appropriately. Just like the Muslim brothers do. This ayah is not to say that only sisters have to represent Islam. No. Everyone does. But this ayah is specific to sisters because it's an aspect of representation that exists within Islam that is specific to sisters. It's a little bit more specific. When I'm walking out, when I go into the clinic, you could maybe guess I'm Muslim, but you can't be sure. But if a lady is wearing hijab, there is no question. There's no question. No one's going to be like, I don't know what. No, it's obvious what she is. It's very clear. The way that she's dressed, it's obvious what she is. For a man, it's not as obvious. You can maybe guess it, right? You can say, most likely this guy's Muslim just based on the way he looks. But you can't be sure. But for women, no, it's very clear. It's very clear. This is an extra aspect of what they carry in terms of obligation, in terms of representation. And with more obligation and with increased importance of representation, there's more ajr. There's more ajr. Never feel bad about this. The more you do, the more you get. The more you put up with, the more reward that you get. This is how Islam works. You are getting more ajr the more you have to do in comparison to what others have to do. So this is where women يتفضلن على الرجال مفضلات على الرجال. Women are ahead and more significant in this matter than men are, because they put on a public representation of Islam in the way that they carry themselves, in the way that they dress. They dictate a social norm. They dictate a social communal norm that allows Islam to function on a societal level with the way that they present themselves physically, with how what they accept themselves, how they accept themselves to look like within a community or publicly. Men do the same, but it's not as effective, right? Men do the same, but it's not as effective. We have to be able to identify the difference here. If women dress in an exposing way, people look. If I dress in an exposing way, they call the cops, right? We don't want it. No one wants to see this. No one wants to see this. This is disgusting. Put it away. No, I don't even want to see it. It's not something that is, no matter how good the physique of a man is, it's not something that publicly is sought after. On the other hand, the women are different. These differences are simple. They're natural. They're part of life. I know that we live at a time that saying this makes me one step close to cancellation. But really, I don't understand what the big deal here is. There's a difference between the physique of a man and the physique of a woman. There's a difference in terms of how these are sought out, what men are attracted to, what women are attracted to, and how we kind of function publicly with the way we see and think. So this ayah is something that I have no space in. So I want the sisters to listen to this. I have no space, I have no place in this ayah, right? My input here is meaningless. Read this ayah and understand who's speaking to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, tell the believers. No. He said, Ya ayyuhan nabi. He spoke to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You're taking this right from him, alayhi salatu wasalam. You don't need me. I'm not the middleman here. I have no place in this argument or this discussion. I am removed from this conversation altogether. It's none of my business. But your Rasul, alayhi salatu wasalam, your leader, قُلْ لِأَزْوَاجِكَ وَبَنَاتِكَ وَنِسَائِكَ. Start with your wives and your daughters. Right? Why? So that the sisters understand that they are held to the standard that the wives of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and the daughters of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam are held to. You're held to the standard of Aisha and Khadija and Salama and Fatima az-Zahra alayhi salam and her sisters. You're held to that standard. And you do not require the input of someone who's coming later in life, like myself. But you're going to be directly spoken to by Muhammad alayhi salatu, by Nabi. يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ. Dress according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's teaching. And it's a beautiful way of putting it. You know what the sister knows by just hearing this phrase, what is meant by this. Dress in a way that's not exposing, that's not revealing, that's respectful. Khalas, you understand. You don't need more. You don't need someone to, okay, what exactly is and what exactly isn't. That's, you figure that out. You figure that out. Don't ask a sheikh about that, honestly. It's not, what I know. You can ask me what am I supposed to do now? Sit here and I see clothes that people, no. This is something you decide. You figure out what is revealing and what is not, what's exposing, what is not, what is respectful and what is not. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَا أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. That way they are known to be ladies of iffah, of chastity, of tahara, of purity. They are known to be ladies of Islam that follow the deen. They get the protection of their community. And they're known to represent Islam appropriately. فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. They're not harmed for it. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. And Allah is always forgiving for the mistakes that are made on this front. And this, to me, is an important message to my sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very much aware of the difficulty that comes with representing Islam as a Muslim woman in the West, as a minority in this country. Very aware, subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the courage that it takes, of the bravery, of the inner strength, of the commitment towards your deen, to dress differently and to hold yourself to a different standard than everyone else and to behave differently. Allah is very aware of that. And Muslims are aware of that as well. And those who aren't are just ignorant to the fact, that's all. But we're very aware of how important this is, how critical it is. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you the strength to continue to do this and to strengthen you in representing Islam in the appropriate manner and to holding on to the purity and the chastity as the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, as his daughters, as the Muslim women at the beginning of Islam did. And inshallah the Muslim men will learn to appreciate that and also to respect the communal and societal norms that come with that as well. And that is what I hope for, inshallah ta'ala, because it makes a big difference. They know what they want here in the West. They know. As you grow up, you'll understand what they're hoping for, what they wish to see, why it is that they wish to unveil everything, why they hope to see the loss of chastity and the loss of decency and the law. They know what they're doing. Don't fall into their trap. The second verse that I'm going to share with you tonight, that's going to be recited in the second 4 rak'at that we will listen to and enjoy, inshaAllah ta'ala, is something the Prophet ﷺ was told to do at the end of surat Saba. In a series of verses that start with the word قُل, say the following, say the following, say the following, meaning represent Islam in the following ways. And the verses are beautiful and all of them are representations. I'm just choosing this one because I think it's very important to point out. What he is told to say here, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is exactly what the prophets who came before him were told to say as well. All of the prophets, if you go to Surah Al-A'raf, and you go to Surah Hud, and you go to Surah, for example, Shu'ara, وَمَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَجْرٍ إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, as part of a 4-verse repetition in Surah Al-Shu'ara. Every time there's a prophet, إِنِّي لَكُمْ رَسُولٌ أَمِينٌ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونَ وَمَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَجْرٍ إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Every time the prophet will say, any prophet will say the exact same thing in praising of, in representing what their message was about. And the Prophet ﷺ, at least 7 times in the Quran, says the same thing or is told to say the same thing. قُلْ مَا سَأَلْتُكُمْ مِنْ أَجْرٍ فَهُوَ لَكُمْ. If I am asking you for any money for learning this, the money that I ask you for is yours. Use it for yourselves. If at any point I ask you for money, that money is all yours. In ajriya illa ala Allah. My reward for what I do comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and only from Allah. Wa huwa ala kulli shay'in shaheed. And He is the one who witnesses all. He is the one who is the witness to everything that is occurring. This is an extremely important aspect of our deen. Ya akhi wa ya ukhti. Islam is not built, it's not a business. It's not a business. And if you try to turn it into one, if we try to monetize the way Islam functions, the way ilm is shared, the way masajid are held, then we are going to get into a lot of trouble. You're going to lose the barakah of what this deen is based upon. And we're going to lose the efficacy of it. And this is not based on nothing. This is based on the fact that every prophet in the Quran came and said specifically the same thing. When you think about it, why wouldn't they be paid? These prophets are absolutely doing nothing else all day and all night aside from going to people and trying to guide them. They don't have time for a job. Like they don't have time to go and make a living because they have to do this day and night. Does it not make sense that their community pay them for it? Does it not make sense that their community takes care of them for this from a financial perspective? قُلْ مَا سَأَلْتُكُم مِّنْ أَجْرٍ فَهُوَ لَكُمْ. Any ajr I ask you for is yours. In ajriya illa ala Allah. I ask for nothing but from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Qalam, he speaks to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and in the same thing in Surah Al-Tur and other places. أَمْ تَسْأَلُهُمْ أَجْرًا فَهُمْ مِنْ مَغْرَمٍ مُثْقَلُونَ. What? Oh Rasulullah, are you asking them for money? Are you soliciting them for ajr, meaning to be paid? You're asking for a salary for this? فَهُمْ مِنْ مَغْرَمٍ مُثْقَلُونَ. So they are overburdened with the debt of needing to pay you. And of course the answer is no, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ajma'in, never. The opposite, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam, the absolute opposite of that. He paid from his own wealth to help people find hidayah. He would pawn his personal belongings to give people loans and to help them with their lives, even though they had more money than he ever did, alayhi salatu wasallam, in his life. This has to be the nature of this relationship. I've been preaching this for 11 years here. I grew up in Syria and I was taught by teachers, my shuyukh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve those who are alive and have mercy upon those who passed away. Allahumma ameen. Wallahi, all of my teachers were either physicians, pharmacists, engineers, accountants, or businessmen. I was not aware of one of them, not even one of them, who sat around and got paid by the government or got paid by the people he was teaching. Not one of them. All of them had other degrees. And all of them were working and making their wealth from those degrees. Shaykh, Nahas, Allah yarhamu, he used to enter the masjid and his clothing, because he worked in copper, his clothing was not the best. But he would walk into the masjid after he made wudu and wear the jubbah. The jubbah is like a bigger, the thing that they put on there, but it's heavy. And it kind of clicks, it clips the shami one, it kind of closes and clicks. And then he puts the imamah. And it's like, you ever seen when you were a kid watched Superman? He walks into the telephone booth and he comes out. Wallahi, this is how he used to feel. He would walk out of the shop, just a guy, and then he's the alim. He's the alim of this whole region. Rahmatullah alayh. Why? Because he took nothing from anyone. He didn't require people's money. He didn't ask them for his own wealth, to be paid. I believe this has to come back again. I believe that one of the main problems that we have today in our ummah is that this is gone. Is that we built Wizarat al-Awqaf, the ministry of endowments, and then we allowed people who are going to get on the manabir and work to be paid by the people, to be paid for doing it, to be paid for sitting and teaching, to be paid for leading prayer, to be paid for... No. This is, even though it makes sense, even though Islamically in fiqh it's acceptable, it's not the right representation of our deen. It's not the right representation. It takes an extremely high degree of mental and social maturity for people to pay someone for something and not see them as an employee. It's very difficult. It's so rare that I argue that it almost doesn't exist. It is so rare that I have yet to see it once. I have yet to see it in my life once, where someone paid someone for something, and then was able to still respect them as a leader. I haven't seen it. I still haven't seen it. And this relationship that exists within our deen is absolutely not employment. I am not employed by you. I'm not accountable to you. I'm accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ajr I get is from Him, not from you. And because of that, this relationship is a relationship of fadl. I do this for the sake of Allah, and you do this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I am taking care of myself, and you're taking care of yourself. I owe you nothing, and you don't owe me anything either. This is important, because the relationship now is a healthy one. It's of respect of ilm. It's not about me. I don't matter at all. It's about ilm. It's about the mimbar and the mihrab being respected in our deen. The moment you're paying the guy who's standing there, meaning you hire them and you can fire them based on a financial transaction, based on a financial contract. It takes away any form of leadership. It takes away any form of reverence and respect and hayba that should exist within our deen. This is a problem. I can spend until tomorrow giving you examples of the scholars in our history. Abu Hanifa was a great tajir. Not only did he not require money from people, he paid all of his great students. He paid them. Abu Yusuf, Yaqub, Al-Ansari, rahimahullah, the greatest scholar that came from the school of Abu Hanifa paid him. He took him from his home and he told him, live here, I take care of your tuition. I will feed you and I will clothe you. You just learn. Imam al-Shafi'i, same thing. Imam Ahmad, same thing. Imam Malik, same thing. They took no money from the governments ever. They refused wealth from the Sultan, and they refused to be paid by anyone. They had their own wealth, and they accumulated their own, and they worked for themselves. This preserved the integrity of ilm, of Islamic law, of Islamic knowledge, of the sanctity of this knowledge. You know why? Because there's no money, there's no amount of money on this planet that is equal to a piece of knowledge that you will take that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to put my kid in a Quran program and pay for it. What? You think those $40 are equal to what your kid is learning here? You think that? No, it's not. That's why everything here is for free. Because I refuse to allow that relationship to exist. You have to understand the nature of this relationship. This is a relationship of fadl. You are coming and asking for knowledge, and those who are offering for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're going to be thankful and grateful. You're not hiring anyone. This is not employment. قُلْ مَا سَأَلْتُكُم مِّنْ أَجْرٍ فَهُوَ لَكُمْ. If I ever ask you for wealth, that wealth is yours. إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ. Those are the words of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. This is what he told his people. And he refused in his life to take anything from others. We have to bring that back again. We need the next generation of imams and ulama to be those who have their own professions. They have studied in universities and they have their own careers and they make their own wealth and they do their da'wah independently. They are not hired by a board of 12 people that are voted by people who come into the masjid once a year. And then they sit down, they tell him what he can and cannot say and should not do. No, that's not acceptable. That's why this model was built. We built wellness to change this model, because this model is not acceptable. It's important. It has nothing to do with arrogance or humbleness. A'udhu billah. I am your servant. I am here to serve you. And the moment I stop serving you, then my peers will remove me and bring someone who will. But it's an issue of integrity, of knowledge, and of law, and of the mihrab and the mimbar. They have to be respected. Because if we do something that decreases the respect of these things in the eyes of the Muslim public, then we lose. As Muslims, as an ummah, we lose. And we have. That's why we've struggled. If you go back to the Middle East, the people who get into Sharia school are the people who couldn't get into anything else. In Syria, this is a fact. I'm telling you a fact of my time. If you wrote the 12th year exam, baccalaureate I used to call it. So you wrote the 12th year exam before you go into university, and you applied to things, and you didn't get anything. You didn't get in anything. You were automatically put in Sharia. You didn't even apply for Sharia. I went there because some of my teachers were teachers in the Sharia, and I saw ladies and men who were Masihiyin and Druze and attending, because they just automatically didn't get anything else. They got into this. Might as well go to the Jami'ah, to the university, and attend. We have cheapened our own faith. We've cheapened it. We've cheapened the knowledge that is there. The people who should speak are those who achieve the most. You want your leader to be the person who knows the least, who achieved the least, who has the least wisdom and kayf. What do you hope to what is the outcome that we were hoping for when we did this? It's based on the fact that this is not a monetized relationship. These masajid are not monetized. If this place is small and it has to get bigger, that's not me asking you for money. This space inside here is enough for me. I'm very comfortable inside here. I don't need more space. If more space is needed for people, then the people will put that in. They'll put that for themselves, for their next generation, for their children, not for the imam, not for the 6 miserable board members that do all of the work. They're not asking, Khalid's not asking you for money, nor is Muhammad, nor is Sarah. They're not asking you for wealth. They don't need, alhamdulillah, they have their jobs, they're taking care of themselves. The wealth that's being asked for is wealth to actually be able to program and provide services for the community. Don't forgive us if we put $1 in our pockets. Don't forgive us. The 90% of people in this masjid are volunteers. We have maybe 2 or 3 hires. And we only have those hires because some of these jobs, you can't depend on volunteers. I can't depend on volunteers for scheduling and for accounting and for, you can't. Because if the volunteer doesn't have time, doesn't show up, the whole place is closed down by CRA. We have to do this appropriately. We have to fix this relationship and take it back to what the Prophet ﷺ did. And once we do, there'll be respect. There'll be respect again. And when you have respect of the minbar and the mihrab and the knowledge that comes from it, only those who are most ambitious, only those who are most capable and most skilled and most knowledgeable will get to that point. And only those who have that will be put in that position, and they will not turn to you with their hands open. It's disgraceful that you allowed for that to happen, that an imam has to sit there worrying about his livelihood, because if he doesn't speak in a certain way, the board will fire him, and then he has to find a way to feed his children. That's not healthy, and it's not appropriate, and that has to change. And this whole system has to be done differently. If we're going to pay imams from masajid, then it has to be done differently. The way that it's done right now in the masajid, I'm not okay with. I'm not okay with. And I will continue to encourage every imam I run into to leave his job and to go find a career and to build a profession and to make money and then come back and do his da'wah independently the way he should do it. Where his commitment to his masjid is not because people paid him for it, but because that is his message, that's his vision. And that's how it should happen, that's how it always has happened. That's how I grew up. All of my teachers, all of them, wallahi. I grew up that way. I think I told this story before. Once I finished my ijazah, my father wanted to give a gift to Sheikh Bassam, hafidhahullah. He wanted to give him a gift, just a gift, a small money gift he put up with me for. Like, my father knows me, so he was like, if you put up with him for 2 years doing this, then you deserve a gift of some sort. So he wanted to give him a gift. Wallahi, the Sheikh almost took the ijazah back. He almost said, that's it, you don't get this anymore. We had to spend half an hour apologizing to him because he took this as a huge offense. It was a gift. It was not in any form, higher employment or hiring, or just a gift. Nope. No, this ilm, you don't attach money to this. You don't attach money to this. You come and learn, I will teach you. There is nothing. I will accept nothing from you. Because there's no money value here. If you put money and you get taught, then your brain learns that, oh, so this money is worth this knowledge. No, it isn't. It isn't. There's nothing that's worth this knowledge. This is a gift from the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. You take it that way with the adab that it requires so that you get the barakah of it. All right. The final ayah that we will hear in the final set of 4 rak'at tonight, inshallah ta'ala, that I'm going to share with you. قوله تعالى في سورة فاطر ثم أورثنا الكتاب الذين اصطفينا من عبادنا فمنهم ظالم لنفسه ومنهم مقتصد ومنهم سابق بالخيرات بإذن الله ذلك هو الفضل الكبير. It says subhanahu wa ta'ala in these verses, Surah Fatir is absolutely mesmerizing, it's extremely beautiful. It says, and then after that, أورثنا الكتاب, we had this book handed down generation to generation and in a form of inheritance. It is the inheritance of our ummah. The inheritance is not, like I said, it's not monetized, it's not money. The inheritance of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is that book. That's what he left behind him alayhi salatu wasalam. That is the tarika, that's the wirtha of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. وإن العلماء فإن الأنبياء لم يورثوا درهما ولا دينارا ولكن ورثوا العلم فمن أخذه أخذ بحظ وافر. The prophets did not leave behind them wealth. They didn't leave behind them dollars, coins of gold or silver, but they left knowledge. So if you take that knowledge, you have taken the inheritance of the prophets. You took their legacy. The Prophet ﷺ, he left behind him the Quran and his life, his sunnah ﷺ, his life, how he lived. That's what he left. He left this world, there was nothing to inherit. They couldn't inherit anything. He didn't leave anything ﷺ that you could inherit. His shield was pawned. They had to go buy it out. Some of his own possessions were pawned. All that was left were sentimental value things. His abaya ﷺ, his na'al sharif ﷺ, things that he wore, that his children took and kept in their family. Still this day there are scholars who have athar sharifa from him ﷺ. They still have pieces of clothing, garments, hairs, things that remind you. There's no money value to it. It's a sentimental value of hubb and barakah. Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id al-Kahil, rahimahullah, in Hims, we used to go once every couple of months to visit him, just to be in the presence of an athar sharif of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, something that came from him alayhi salatu wasalam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made sure that the inheritance was the kitab. ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابِ. Then we took this book and we made this book the inheritance of our Prophet, and we handed it down from one generation to the other generation to the next generation. And the people who take this book, Either they represent Islam appropriately or they don't. Either they represent this book appropriately or they don't. Just like the sisters represent Islam in certain settings. And just like the Prophet ﷺ had to represent Islam socially in a certain way, refusing any monetizing of this relationship, those who take the Quran, those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the barakah, the ajr, the beauty, the opportunity of the Quran, of learning the Quran and understanding the Quran and carrying the Quran inside their chests where they stand there and they recite it. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there are three types of people when they are given the Quran. One group, ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. May Allah protect us. Allahumma tub alayna ya Allah. Allahumma ghfir lana warhamna. وَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Some of these people will take the Quran and they will misuse it. And they will oppress themselves through the Quran. Meaning they will learn the words, they will learn what the Quran teaches, and then they will go and they will practice the opposite. They will put on a show for others, but deep down inside they're not taking any of it seriously and they're not actually applying it to their lives. ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. This is someone who was granted an opportunity by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then they went and they blew it. وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا فَأَتْبَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ وَلَوْ شِئْنَا لَرَفَعْنَاهُ بِهَا وَلَكِنَّهُ أَخْلَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِنْ تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكْهُ يَلْهَثْ ذلك مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآياتنا فقصص القصص لعلهم يتفكرون. And indeed, tell them about the story of the person we granted our verses to, our signs. We gave them the book. فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا. It's like we cloaked them with a beautiful cover and they took it off. They didn't want it. They unveiled it. They threw away that covering, that beautiful covering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them to conceal themselves and to beautify themselves. And Shaitan took them on a ride and they followed his hawa, his desires, and ended up someone who went astray. And had he made the right choices, this person would have been held to the highest of standards, highest of ranks Yawm al-Qiyamah with this Quran, with these teachings. But وَلَكِنَّهُ أَخْلَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ. But this person's eyesight was down on the ground, where the desires are, where the shubuhat and the shahawat, where money and where play and where distractions and where all these things, aspects of this worldly life that are useless and are worthless and have no value at all. أَخْلَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ. He dived into the ground looking for these worldly desires that have no value at all, following what his nafs wants. This person is like a dog. If it carries a burden, it is yalhath. It's breathing out loud with its tongue out. And if it doesn't carry a burden, its tongue is out. This person, you're going to be tired either way. At least do it for the right reason. You're going to be tired and you're going to be finding difficulty. And why do it? Why do it without carrying the burden? Without carrying the risala that you were given to. فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Some people will take this book. Yawm al-Qiyamah, the Prophet ﷺ tells us, في Hadith Muslim, that when Jahannam is being prepared, before even hisab, he says ﷺ, أَوَّلْ مَنْ يُسَعَّرْ بِهِمُ النَّارِ. The people who Allah is going to use just to kindle the fire of Jahannam in preparation for those who are going to go there. And he points out people ﷺ. And amongst them, he says, a alim, and a qari', and a kareem, and a shaheed. He points out someone who died as a martyr, and someone who was very generous, and someone who was knowledgeable, and a qari' of the Quran. That's the first one he uses. Why? Because they did it for the wrong reason. Ya Rabb, I memorized the Quran for you. And Allah says, no, you didn't. It has nothing to do with me. You did this so that people would admire you, so that you would get some status and get some recognition and get some attention. And you did. You got all those things. I owe you nothing. I owe you nothing for this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala salama. Ya wallahi. فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. May Allah protect us. وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ. And then there are those who, they're doing just enough. Al-iqtisad, in Arabic it means finance, but it also means that you're frugal. There's some frugality. You're not generous with it. You're not taking this book and generously practicing it and spreading it. You're muqtasid, barely doing enough. Just doing enough, just cutting even. Barely cutting even every time. وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And others are sabiq. They are way ahead. It's a race and they are way ahead of the group. Way ahead with the khairat, with the goodness that they are doing with this book, with the beauty that they are spreading with it, with the application that they are taking upon themselves, bi'idhnillah, through through the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْكَبِيرُ. That indeed is the great bounty. The great bounty. He tells us alayhi salatu wasalam, لا حسد إلا في اثنتين. There's only two times where you can perform ghibta, the good type of envy, where you're not hoping that someone loses something, but rather you want it for yourself. That's what he's trying to explain here, alayhi salatu wasalam. Only two times does he think that it's worthy of feeling that way. Meaning everything else is not worth feeling that way about. You see someone in a nice car, don't hope you had the car. Ayah, it's not nice. Why would you do that? It's not worth caring for. Like, it's not worth hoping for. It's not worth it. Like, be very frugal with your emotions and your hopes and your desires. Don't desire a possession. Don't see a big house and desire it. No, it's not worth it. Wallah, it's not worth it. But he tells you, alayhi salatu wasalam, two things that's worth it. Where if you see someone having these two things, you can say, oh, I wish I had that. Oh, Ya Rabbi, I wish I had those two things. The first one, رَجُلٌ آتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْقُرْآنَ فهو يقرأه بالليل والنهار ويعمل به ويعلمه خلق الله. This is narration by Ahmad. This person, the person who was granted the Quran. So they read the Quran day and night, and they apply it throughout their lives, and they teach it to others. That's something worthy of having ghibta for. That ilm, that knowledge, that wisdom. وَرَجُلٌ آتَاهُ اللَّهُ مَالًا فَهُوَ يُنْفِقُ مِنْهُ عَنْ يَمِينِهِ وَعَنْ شِمَالِهِ. And someone was granted wealth, and they are spending it for the sake of Allah, right and left. They're just shoveling the wealth for the sake of Allah in every direction. Those two people, you can feel, I wish I had that. I wish I could do it. Everything else is not worth it. Everything else is a waste of your emotion, waste of your time. It's just, there's no real value to it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst the people of the Quran and allow us to represent the Quran appropriately. And make us from سابقون بالخيرات بإذن الله. And may Allah protect us from being ظالمين لأنفسنا اللهم آمين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allah